Okay, so yeah, today I'm going to be talking about algorithms and echo chambers online. And the reason I wanted to talk about this topic specifically is recently, especially in quarantine, I found myself scrolling through Instagram Explore a lot. And I've found that some of the content has started to get a little bit repetitive. And that got me thinking as to how does Instagram come up with all of this stuff in the first place, which led me to this investigation and presentation. So the first thing to understand is what exactly is an echo chamber. And there's a definition here where basically it says that an echo chamber is any environment where a person encounters information that only reflects their own views and blocks out information that doesn't align with their views. And the people that live in these echo chambers are often sheltered from any views that are different from their own. And we see this a lot today in a lot of different places. And a large part of how echo chambers work is because of kind of a psychological thing called confirmation bias. And it's our human tendency to interpret existing evidence, usually is objective or fact, as confirmation of one's existing biases or something that we already believe in. So even if something is true and is objective, we have a tendency to look at that fact with what we want to see in mind and twist that fact to see and fit the narrative that we want it to. And because of that, that's why echo chambers are especially dangerous, because you have these areas where people are posting so much content that people can spin to fit their own agendas. And as a result, people are feeding into thinking, oh, what I'm believing is true, and they're not getting any outside exposure that they're wrong. And a separate part of that is echo chambers also label objective facts, which are true, as misinformation because it doesn't fit in with their agenda. And those are the two parts of echo chambers and why they are so dangerous. And there's a diagram on the right to kind of demonstrate what the confirmation bias looks like, which is you're looking at the parts of the objective facts that fit with what you already believe in while ignoring the parts that do not. Now, there's a lot of consequences to echo chambers, and I've listed just a couple of them here. So for people in echo chambers, they tend to reinforce their existing biases, often without acknowledging them or realizing they exist. They also start to completely ignore and reject any information that doesn't fall in line with their views, even if it is proven by evidence or science. These people in echo chambers also become very vulnerable to believing misinformation and spreading misinformation, in part because of the confirmation bias, so that they think that, oh, if this supports my point, then it must be true. And in these echo chambers, there's such a high volume of information that's being flowing out that it often is quite convincing. Additionally, the part of echo chambers that we see a lot in the modern age is that people become increasingly close-minded and unwilling to accept other people's views. So it's totally fine to have a difference in opinions, but if you get to the point where you no longer can entertain other views or completely rule them out as fake, then that's the point where it becomes an issue. And we see this a lot in modern partisan spheres, especially with political issues, and we see this online as well. So as to who's affected by echo chambers, the term echo chamber is usually referring to some pretty extreme groups. So on the left, I've detailed of some of these via pictures. So you have the conspiracy theorists, you have the flat earthers, there are some political conspiracies or super extremist groups. And that's usually what echo chamber is referring to. However, in the vague definition of an echo chamber, we see this to a certain extent, definitely nowhere near the extent of the stuff on the left-hand side, but to a point where we're starting to get into our own little kind of loop where we're being fed the information we want to see and being censored away from the information we don't want to see on these apps, including other social medias. And that's what I'm going to be delving in today. So one part is to realize why echo chambers are so common online and what part of social media and other online platforms make it natural for echo chambers to kind of thrive. And the first point is that we get to choose exactly what we want to see and who we want to interact with. For a lot of these accounts, won't see content on your personal feed unless you choose to follow them. And you can unfollow these people at any time. Whereas in real life, you might have to talk with a person face to face that you may not necessarily like. And because of this, you're more likely to get fed information you like and not fed information that you disagree with or don't like. On the converse side of that, we also get to choose what content we don't want to see. On the internet, we have the option to block people, to completely blacklist websites, to just ignore certain information, click away. But in real life, if you're in a tough conversation with someone you disagree with, it's not like you can block them in real life or just walk away without it being awkward at least. So that thing makes things different. Additionally, online, it's very easy to spread a lot of information to a large audience. And while this can be really good and be used for good causes, by the same coin, it also makes it super easy to spread large amounts of misinformation, which can be used within these echo chambers as kind of fodder or feed for the confirmation bias. And the last point is that social media companies use algorithms and machine learning and other different types of filters in order to try to give us the content that they think we want to see. And while this is good because social media is a place where you want to see what you want to see, they also start to get rid of the things that you don't want to see. And as I said earlier, if it gets to the point where you start to no longer consider or completely rule out other viewpoints different from your own, that's when it starts to become more of an echo chamber than a personalized preference. So let's take a look at how this works kind of mechanically. And I'm going to break down how this works through three main apps: TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. So on TikTok, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar, but for those of you who aren't, there are three main places where you can get new content or new TikToks. The first one is the following page. That's the image on the left. And this is basically where you get all of the TikToks from the accounts that you're following. And these are typically influencers you like and want to follow, or your close friends. The next one over, the picture in the middle, is of the For You page. And I think I can speak for most of my friends when I say this is where most people spend the bulk of their time on TikTok. They can spend hours scrolling through here, and it's basically an endless scroll with content that's customized for you and your interests. And finally, there's also the Discover page, which is kind of like a search bar, and that's the picture on the very right. And this is where you can search for different hashtags, what's trending, or different sounds. But from my experience and from the friends I asked, most people don't really use this. So the thing with echo chambers and TikTok is most of it is within the For You page and less so the other two pages. For the following, it's going to be content you obviously do like, but it's going to be because it's people who you actively follow, including your friends and other influencers. And on the Discover page, I'm pretty sure that that's nearly the same for anyone, and you search for what you search for. So I'm going to go deeper into the For You page now. So for the For You page, as part of TikTok's effort to try to be more transparent, they released this blog post making a statement about their For You page. They basically describe how it's powered by a recommendation system and that there's no two For You pages that are the same, meaning that it's catered to each user's specific interests, and as a result, each For You page is different. But the question is, how exactly do they curate this content and make it specialized for each user? Well, the answer is in the TikTok algorithm. And while this is not fully known because TikTok obviously has a lot of secrets that they don't want to give out, what we do know is what they released in that blog post. So they basically rank content via an algorithm based on the following criteria. So the first is user interactions, and there are two types: positive interactions, which is when a user likes something or shows interest in something, or negative interactions, which is when a user doesn't like something or shows a negative reaction to that. So users interactions, that includes what you share, who you follow, what posts you comment on, what posts you like. Those are all positive interactions. But there's also negative interactions, which can be like not watching a video to the very end, or scrolling right past the video, or even clicking on it and clicking the option that TikTok gives you, which is that you can say that you don't want to see content like this, which is pretty direct. TikTok also counts in your user data, which is the content that you create as a user, what content you usually frequently make, what kinds of sounds you use, and they factor that in as well. And then on the other side, they also look at the content that they want to try to give you. They look at the caption to see if there's any keywords or hashtags that might match your interest from what they drew from your data, what sounds they're making, hashtags, and different stuff like that. And in addition to that, they also track your user account settings, and they did admit to this in their blog post. So they say they look at your location in order to try to match you geographically. They try to look at your language preference, as it makes more sense to give someone a TikTok in their own language. And also they look at what device you're on, which they claim is for optimizing the video display, although who knows what they're actually using it for. And there's also the timeliness aspect, which is when the TikTok was posted, as more recent TikToks are more likely to pop up on someone's For You page. So that's how it works on a kind of detailed level. But in essence, they're taking data from you, data from all of the content, and matching all of it so that you get what TikTok thinks that you want based on your past user browsing history and activity. And because of this, people start to kind of get on different sides of TikToks. And there have been TikToks that are kind of talking about this as well, saying, oh, I'm now on straight TikTok, or I'm on conservative TikTok, or I'm on alt TikTok, or different terms like that. And that's often because of all of this stuff that's done by the TikTok algorithm to kind of split people into groups by content and their user activity and feeding them what they want. So for the most part, for the For You page, you're not going to get anything serious, and it's not going to be like a real echo chamber. But if you do get really deep into the political side to the point where you're deep enough that TikTok won't give you videos from the other side, then you might be at danger in going too far. Next, we have Instagram. And for Instagram, users can get their content through one of two different screens or interfaces. And you will see some parallels to TikTok here. The first one is the feed, which is a parallel to TikTok's following, where it's basically your feed where you get content or posts from everyone that you follow. And again, this is usually influencers you like or your friends. And the other one is the Explore page. And this can be parallel to TikTok's For You page, because this is basically giving you a bunch of content that's customized to your interest and past activity. And as you can see in the example I've given, that gives a pretty good idea of my interest because that's taken from my own. So you can see some avatar, Quora, cooking, memes, Hamilton, that kind of stuff. And obviously my Explore page is going to be looking a lot different than your Explore pages. So for the Instagram algorithm, they actually made a change in 2016 and it got a lot of backlash at the time. Before and prior to 2016, it was displaying posts in a simple reverse chronological order. So the most recent post will be at top and everything else will go to the bottom and in time order. But in 2016, they changed it so that posts display by algorithm, which means that they're putting posts that they think are the most relevant to your interests from the people you're following at the top of your feed, disregarding time order to an extent, as they're not going to put a post from many weeks back up, but that also means that a post from 2 days ago might pop up earlier than one that was published maybe an hour ago. And this is how Instagram's algorithm works for prioritizing posts from the feed. So they base it off of three main criteria. The first is interest, which is based off of history of posts that you like, share, comment on, watch, are tagged in, are in a similar location to, and that kind of stuff. There's also timeliness, which is a feature shared with TikTok, which is how recent its post, but it's also considered less, as I said earlier, because time isn't the most determining factor. And another important one is relationship, which is based on how frequently a user interacts with a given account. And this can also be through how many times you view someone's story, how many times you like their posts or comment on them or share that post with friends. So this is basically how they determine how the feed is organized for Instagram. And this also kind of is related to echo chambers, but not as much as the Explore page, which I'll get into in a minute. But it basically prioritizes the content that they think you want to see, which is going to be the recurring theme in all of these platforms. Now, for the Explore page, this is the one that I was really interested in because I was very confused as to how this worked, because Instagram Explore was pretty good at predicting my interests, and that seemed to be the trend for all of my friends as well. So in 2014, Instagram changed its Explore page. It used to be called a popular page, where it would be posting all of the trending posts, and essentially every user, it might be a little bit different based on geographic location, but basically every user had the same popular page with all of the trending posts. However, in 2014, Instagram changed it to the current Explore page. And in the years following that, they made some tweaks and eventually made it so that the Explore page curates content so that it fits each user, kind of like the For You page. But it's kind of different because it has a little bit different of a style and how it works. So it basically shows you a bunch of different posts that should convey your different interests based on your user and activity history. And that's what you see here on this screen. So it has all my interests, avatar, cooking, all of that stuff. But when you click on any one of these screens, then you can start scrolling and it becomes its own infinite scroll. But everything within that one scroll will be on that same topic. So for example, if I clicked the avatar one here, and then if I kept scrolling down, then I would see a bunch of avatar related content and almost nothing else within that individual scroll. So hopefully you can see how that basically sounds kind of like an extension of an echo chamber to an extent, because you're just getting deeper and deeper into one aspect of content without anything diverse getting in there that's catered to your interests. And Instagram uses a special two-stage algorithm, which I'm going to be explaining now in order to curate this information. So the first stage is called the candidate generation stage. And this is basically where Instagram gathers your data, gathers a bunch of the millions of posts that are on Instagram and tries to match the both of you in order to get a preliminary cup of what posts you might be interested in. So first, Instagram identifies what are called seed accounts that are related in correlation to your account. And these are accounts that you regularly interact with, which means liking, commenting, or saving for later, and also identifies other accounts that are similar. Another important part about these seed accounts are that they often are very consistent in the content that they're posting, which means that a friend is likely not a seed account because they can post almost anything. But an influencer, for example, like a cooking channel or a specific YouTuber that does fashion, they're mostly going to be posting about one specific topic, which makes it very easy for Instagram to label them as a certain kind of account, aka a food or fashion account, which helps them identify as such for a seed account. Instagram then pulls a bunch of data from your habits and from these seed accounts, labeling them as what general categories they fall under, and then compiles all of them and sends them to the next stage. And in doing so, Instagram essentially eliminates a bunch of the content that you have absolutely no interest in. So for example, if you are a very liberal user, you obviously probably don't want to see conservative content on your feed. And because of that, by taking this seed account, if you only follow liberal accounts and nothing else, then Instagram will cut out the millions of conservative related posts and send only the liberal related posts on to the next stage. After that, there is the ranking stage, where Instagram takes a bunch of the posts that were generated from the last stage and uses machine learning algorithms and content filtering methods to further reduce that into 3 steps. First, they reduce it down to the top 150 posts based on relevance and different filtering methods. Then in the second stage, they cut that further down to 50 posts using algorithms and neural networks. And then they factor into account data that is even deeper into both you and the content that they're considering for you to see, such as how many likes does that individual post have, or how many people generally interact with that account in the first place. Then from these 50 posts, they use even further algorithms and even more complex methods to cut that number in half and generate the top 25 post candidates for you. And what they do is they put those 25 as the cover for the different scrolls on your Explore page. And those are the top 25 that you see here. And as you can see in the photo that I have on my slide, those are my top 25 that Instagram generated for me. And as a result, you should have high quality content deemed by Instagram to best fit all of your interests. And when you click on those individual 25 posts, if you like it, then you're going to keep scrolling, and all of the information that you scroll and content that you access there is going to be related to that first post. Now, what's good about this is that it gives you the information you want to see, and Instagram does this in a really efficient way. But through this filtering method, it basically cuts out anything that you don't want to see. And while this is good for our purposes, it also can lead to situations that are similar or reminiscent to echo chambers, because it's kind of like a positive feedback loop. Instagram looks at your usual browsing habits, and then it generates these things that you like and puts it on your explore page. Then on your explore page, you're bound to go on these accounts and you're going to scroll, and you're probably going to see content that you like and you're going to interact with it. You're going to watch the videos, comment on those posts, and like those posts. And because of that, Instagram says, hey, look, this user is interacting with this kind of post even more. Let's give them even more of this content. And in effect, you basically go deeper and deeper, where Instagram starts to give you content that you like, but it becomes more exclusive and starts to filter out the stuff that you don't. And if you go deep enough into this, especially for political issues, less so stuff like Avatar, then you might eventually find yourself in something like an echo chamber. Now, moving on to Twitter. I personally don't use Twitter, but I did some research on it because a lot of political discussion and current event discussion is happening on Twitter. And there's actually a similar pattern to Instagram and TikTok. So in 2014, Twitter rolled out a recommendations feature. And in 2017, they then released a relevance model in which they explained that they started ranking their posts, again, not in reverse chronological order, but in order by relevance in accordance with what a user deems interesting or what they want to see. And then in 2019, they then further introduced Twitter topics, which are basically different timelines that users can follow that are all relating to one topic, which interestingly enough includes almost everything that's broad except for politics. Now for Twitter, they have two basic options to access content. They have their latest tweets, which is the reverse chronological order that they have the option of, and also the top tweets, which is the equivalent to an explore page or the TikTok For You page. And how the Twitter algorithm works is, again, it weighs different criteria in order to generate content that they think you want based on these different factors. So Twitter ranks on recency, which is how recently a tweet was published, engagement, where they analyze keywords and hashtags in the tweet and how much users engage with those tweets, interactions, which are measured more quantifiably by the number of clicks, retweets, favorites, or impressions for certain tweets, and other information that TikTok also takes into account, such as what language the tweet is in, where you're tweeting from, and rich media, which is basically what type of media are you using, if it is a GIF or just plain text or emojis, and they try to match that to see what you want. And with this, you also get the similar effect of you getting the content you want, but Twitter is known for being polarizing in a certain extent. And a lot of echo chamber studies have been happening on Twitter because it's relatively easy to trace what gets retweeted and reposted where. And I have some visuals for you. So this one is taken from a study of around 560,000 tweets, and this is on 3 polarizing issues relating to politics and morals, mainly in America. And what you see here is any tweet that is deemed as one falling in line with liberal views is painted blue, and one falling in line in conservative views is deemed as red. And these are then mapped out based on how far they are on the spectrum, with tweets that are crossing across these spectrums being the ones that you see in the middle that are kind of black, and also the different wavy lines that you see. However, you can clearly see kind of 2 epicenters, one that's very blue and one that's very red. And this is a visualization of the echo chambers that are happening, because people only want to like, retweet, and keep on their feed the content that they agree with and less so content they disagree with. And as a result, you have the formation of these 2 echo chambers. Furthermore, I have another example here. This one is an example from Europe, specifically Britain at the time of Brexit. And again, you have a similar setup with the two epicenters, with the blue being people in support of Britain leaving the EU, and the red being people in favor of Britain remaining in the EU. And once again, you can see some crossover in the middle, but for the large part, people are staying within their political views. And because of that, they are in danger of falling risk to echo chambers. So all in all, echo chambers are typically not what you're going to encounter online, because those are usually pretty extreme, although you're going to likely see some semblance of it, especially as you spend more time on the social media and get exposed to views that are only similar to your own and less exposed to views that are different from your own. And while that's totally okay, and it's most likely harmless, as it's going to be more fun material that you're just consuming for fun, like different videos, your influencers, your favorite shows, when it comes to more serious issues like news, real life, and politics, you just need to be careful that you're not getting too far into things where you can no longer consider different opinions. And that's all I have. Thank you.